Welcome back to the See-Through Podcast, a podcast that creates transparency on disabilities and the champions with them. This episode is a big one because this episode marks a mini milestone for the See-Through Podcast. Because this episode is the big 10. It's the 10th episode. And not only is it the 10th episode, but it is the first time a guest on the podcast shares the same disability as myself, which is retinitis pigmentosa. So you could say that this episode comes full circle with episode 1, where I simply introduce the podcast, who I am, and my goals here. And that feels like such a long time ago. On that note, if you haven't listened to past episodes, there's always time to get caught up, so go check those out after this episode. For those who are new to the podcast, I'm your host, Lance Johnson, and as I mentioned earlier, I have retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short, which is a vision disability that is degenerative. So to help you understand it more, I'll give you a little simple breakdown. Basically, my peripheral vision is diminishing, and this causes me to have what you could call tunnel vision. RP also causes night blindness as well. But don't worry, you'll hear more about RP in this episode. So back to the guest. Who is the guest this week? This week I was able to talk to the very interesting Victor Mifsud. Victor is a documentary filmmaker and public figure who calls himself the blind biohacker. Why does he call himself the blind biohacker? Well, you'll find out later. What else will you find out? Well, you'll also get to hear about Victor's feature-length documentary film, My Neuroplastic Adventure, which is a very fascinating film that documents Victor's journey to find alternative therapies, treatments, and exercises that alter the brain's neuroplasticity, which can result in improving your vision. Neuroplasticity is a subject you'll learn all about on this episode, and for the record, that word is very hard to say, and it took me multiple takes to get that one. But anyways, you'll also learn about red light therapy, peptides, how the electromagnetic fields around us affect us, how sleep patterns and our circadian rhythm affects our vision. You'll even learn about how Victor has used a psychedelic ayahuasca tea to help his vision, and much, much more. But before you hear our conversation, I wanted to play some audio from the trailer of Victor's film, which, to remind you, is called My Neuroplastic Adventure. So here that is.
My name is Victor Mifsud. I'm a DJ, an artist, a traveler, a dreamer, and I'm legally blind. This story started as a journey to heal my eyes, but it grew to be about so much more. Learning how to heal my mind, body, and soul, using ancient wisdom and modern science. I'm a citizen scientist. I'm the blind biohacker. And along the way, I'll meet brilliant thinkers pushing the frontiers of science.
We've learned more about the brain in the last 10 years than in the previous history of humankind.
I just want people to know that everything we do is organized by the brain. And the brain is plastic. It can change.
There should be no stigma. It's just that individual's brain isn't working quite the same way, and we can change that.
It's like taking your body and fine-tuning it so that your body becomes this beautiful musical instrument.
We would not suffer unless something in us knew that it didn't have to be this way. You can see it as a problem, as a disease to get rid of, or you can see it as a wake-up call.
We have the power within us to change our lives and be who we're truly meant to be.
And that's the story of this movie, My Neuroplastic Adventure.
Hey, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, man.
You're my first guest with RP.
Oh, right. Wow.
So retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short. If you listen in and you follow this podcast, you've heard me say that a lot. I try each episode no matter who I'm talking to and what their disability is, I try to relate to them through my disability, which is RP, which today is something different because we share the same thing. So maybe it would be cool to hear you talk about retinitis pigmentosa. Can you tell everyone what it is and how it affects you?
Yeah, well, I got more experience than you. I'm a little older than you, so I got maybe 12 years on you. So I've been dealing with a bit longer. I mean, RP affects different people. There's so many different types of RP as well. So, for me, first started noticing my night blindness issues at a young age. That was one of the first symptoms for me. Like when kids were playing outside, I was playing outside with them and it'd start to get dark. I wouldn't know how they'd be functioning and running around, so I'd like tell my parents that, like, how are they running around so easily without bumping into things? And, like I find it difficult to see at night. My parents were like, what do you want to see? It's dark. Like, how can you see it? So they didn't really understand that aspect of and then I kind of kept complaining. And I guess my mother started noticing that I'd have a difficult time like finding things or tracking things. And then I went to the Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. That's the name of the hospital. And I got diagnosed at about 9. So, and it didn't really affect my life, kind of like your story, till I got older. I was able to drive, and at 21 or so, I went in for a routine eye exam, and the doctor asked me if I drove, and I said, yeah, I did. I drove for 3-4 years, problem free actually. And he's like, you shouldn't be driving. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? I'm a great driver. And my driver's license was my independence, and I drove to work. I had my own car, and it was a big blow to my independence. And and it was very hard for me. So I went through a big depression and anxiety, and was put on like different medications, just trying to like deal with that loss from it. So that was a bit difficult. But my main symptoms of retinitis pigmentosa are basically I have tunnel vision. My vision's been tunneling from the outside inward. So looking through the kind of like the lens of a camera all the time, which is why I like you, do a lot of video and editing. I actually have done quite a bit of video and editing. So I made that documentary film. It's called My Neuroplastic Adventure, which is kind of chronicles my healing adventure through the lens of my approach, different treatments, kind of like modern science and ancient wisdom, holistic approach to just healing the body, mind, and soul.
Yeah, your film. I've watched your film. It's called My Neuroplastic Adventure. I watched it twice. It's a great film, by the way.
Thank you.
I went to film school, and I consider myself a filmmaker, and I currently work as a video editor. So it's kind of like having you on the podcast is like striking gold for me, because not only do you have RP and we can connect there, but also I get to talk to you about a movie, which is, I feel like I'm excited for this conversation.
I'm glad to be here, man.
Making a feature length documentary is no small task. That's a lot of time, a lot of energy. How did this project come about? How did it get started?
Well, it really started with my healing journey itself. 10 plus years ago, I was still going through my process, suffering from, I just got out of a relationship and was in a pretty bad funk, depression. And like this pattern kind of kept happening of my life not really going as planned. And, with career, with, relationships, with just wherever I was. And I was like, something's going on, and I don't know why I keep running into these same things. And then, one thing led to another, where I found these books that really changed my life. One is called The Brain That Changes Itself. It's about neuroplasticity and the brain's ability to change via like certain types of, environmental changes, stimulation, or exercises. So it was a brilliant book by Dr. Norman Deutsch. And then, I have always had these other issues like ADD, and I found this other book by Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a Canadian physician who writes a lot about the origins of trauma and early childhood. And then he writes about attention deficit disorder. So I read that and was really like awestruck in terms of like how much I like could relate to that book in terms of my upbringing and, my parents and, my difficult time focusing and the same aspect of trauma, because I'd always have, depression, and, I used to take various types of medications for it and all this stuff. And it's just like, these books just changed my life. And I thought like, wow, the body is really intelligent, and you can, if given the right environment, the body can actually change the body, the brain. We were often told that the brain is stuck the way you are, and that's how you're going to be. So hearing these stories of transformation really inspired me to go down that path and fix my brain and see if I can alleviate some trauma or depression that I was going through. And so that was really the start. And, I just kind of went down that path, and I ended up getting connected to all these doctors, researchers, psychologists, therapists, and just, through these books that I was reading, like I said, I met all these people that actually you see in the film, and in that 10 year, it basically chronicled 10 years of work and reprogramming that I did, from, trauma therapy, psychedelic therapy, vision therapy, holistic vision therapy, somatic therapy, PEMF therapy, and all these alternative treatments I wanted to kind of highlight. And they've made such a difference in my life. And it's basically, this film is like a roadmap for people to see and to learn that the body, again, there's an innate intelligence if if you put in the right environment, that you can actually heal. And like I said, that's how I kind of came to be with the film. And over time, I just went to the network. I said, hey, I'd like to make a film. I had done some other projects with this network, and then we put together a team, and that's how it started, and that's how it came to be.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you'd have to be passionate about something to spend that much time on it, and to get a film crew involved. And I'll share a funny insight. I originally had no plans of making a podcast. I was planning a documentary that I wanted to make that highlighted various people who have retinitis pigmentosa or other visual impairments. And I was doing research for that documentary and finding people I wanted to talk to. I was getting it all figured out. And then I realized that someone had already made that documentary. I can't remember the name of that specific documentary off the top of my head, but it was very similar. It's a filmmaker in New York. He has retinitis pigmentosa. Let me actually figure out the name of that.
Is it called Driving Blind?
That sounds...
Where they kind of do a road trip, and these guys are like slowly losing their vision while they drive. And then there's another one called As Slow as Possible, where this guy's got RP and wants to go see this exhibit, where this musical exhibit art piece happens, and it's like this note change that takes place in this big musical exhibit. I mean, those are the only two that I know of right now.
Interesting. So the one I just found it. It's called Vision Portraits.
Okay.
And it was made by filmmaker Rodney Evans. And I haven't seen the film, but I saw the trailer, and it was essentially the same idea as what I was planning to make. So yeah, Vision Portraits. I'll have to check that out, and I'll have to check out the two other films that you just mentioned. it's awesome that there's films being made about it, right? And yours being one of them. And essentially, I had to shoot down this documentary idea, and I was like, you know what I should do, and what's way less expensive and allows me to talk to anyone without having to travel, is do a podcast. And so it just kind of transformed into this. So I'm kind of envious of you in the sense that you got to make a documentary, and the whole, because making a movie is fun, and getting people on camera is very exciting, and getting like the B-roll and editing it together, it's kind of a magical process, but it's also a very intensive process with producing it and organizing interviews and booking times with people and paying people for their skill set and all that, and traveling, the gear that's involved. It's all that. So this podcast basically is self-produced. I'm doing it here in my bedroom, talking to you now. I didn't have to fly to Canada, even though I would want to fly to Canada and interview you with a camera. I think that'd be way cooler. But for now, this is like perfect for me. With all that being said about filmmaking, I wanted to move on. You mentioned a few things about the content of the film, which is called My Neuroplastic Adventure. But I think a real basic starter with your film would be about you. You're the central character in this documentary. The film follows you, and in the film you call yourself the blind biohacker. Let's just start off with that. Why do you call yourself the blind biohacker?
Well, it really stemmed from taking my health into my own hands. I mean, that's this movement that's been going on called biohacking, which is essentially kind of like going beyond doctors and researching how to heal yourself by quantifying, measuring, tracking sleep. Like I got this sleep tracking ring. It's like really taking into consideration all these different variables on how we can really take your health into your own hands. So it's like, the biohacking movement is kind of like started by Dave Asprey and the bulletproof coffee kind of guy, like, a couple of years ago. But I was already, essentially doing that about 10 years ago by with the things that I was doing, like, neuroplasticity, reprogramming my brain and looking to see if there was any other answers from not from the Western medical model. So I was really into like holistic healing and not taking pharmaceutical pills, because I already went through all that stuff and it didn't do much for me, just a big Band-Aid solution. So I, and a lot of it was too this like coming out of the closet, so to speak, because of, as you might know, that RP can kind of be like an invisible visual disability.
Oh, definitely.
And some, or, where you tell people like, yeah, I'm legally blind or I'm blind. Like, what? No, you're not. Like, you don't look blind. It's just like, what does that mean to like look blind? And like, then you have to go into the spiel that, there's vision losses on a certain spectrum, and there's various parts to vision, central vision, peripheral vision. And, just because I'm making eye contact with you, it doesn't mean I'm not blind or can't see. It's RP is very complicated. So, but yeah, that's how I got into it. So it's a mix of like coming out of this, saying that I am blind, that I am visually impaired, and like proud of it. And I'm hacking my vision. I'm hacking my health.
It seems like your film covers a lot of ground with a lot of different scientists and researchers and doctors. Basically, it all centers around what the title of the film is, which is My Neuroplastic Adventure. And, you were just talking about how you call yourself the blind biohacker and how you are taking steps to biohack your own body. And all of that is centered around what's called the brain's neuroplasticity. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess before we dive into the like deep details of what's covered in the film, let's just start out with like a softball question of like, what is neuroplasticity?
Neuroplasticity is basically the brain's ability to change itself, really, and given the right environment and stimulus, it can change for good or for bad, depends on the stimulus. We see with our brains, not with our eyes, really, because the eyes are just like extension, like outer visual extensions of the brain that you can see. So, if the brain is plastic, I mean, the eyes can heal too. And we're often taught, when you go to an optometrist or whatever, that, like, why is it that if you break your arm, you put a cast on and then the body's intelligent enough to like heal itself, but why is when it has anything to do with the eyes, it's just like, you're screwed. That's just the way it is. So I don't really buy that anymore. And I think if nature is very intelligent, there is an answer for it. So that's kind of what really got me to really explore the nature of the eyes and what it means to see, and what can possibly be done to fix or regenerate my condition, and if it can have an effect on mine, given I was told that nothing can be done about it, like what are other possibilities, so and it got me meeting some very interesting people in the fields, in those different fields, and different doctors and therapists, and yeah, they changed my life. And like I said, I wanted to feature them in the film of what the work that they were doing, like Dr. David Weber, David Weber, and there's a few people I didn't get a chance to talk to in the film, but there's a guy named Dr. Jacob Lieberman, who's a really interesting doctor who was an optometrist turned holistic optometrist, and again, he's writes a lot about how the eyes are actually can change again if given the right environment, and it's really about a mindset, and a lot of it, the vision that we see is actually very based on what's going on inside our heads, really, like from an unconscious trauma perspective. So that there's emotions play a big role in our vision. So that's one of the things that I've learned along the way, and for me of dealing with these unaddressed unconscious traumas that I've had since childhood, which you can't really, they're hard to really recognize until you either keep running into a similar problem over and over, or like these things that kind of keep bugging you over and over. And from my film, we talk about a big T trauma or a little T trauma, and most of us have little T traumas.
Yeah, what would you consider a little T trauma, and I guess what would be the opposite, big T trauma?
A big T trauma would be like witnessing like somebody die in a car accident, or like your friend die in war, or something like that. Some pretty heavy stuff, or like death of a parent. Like that's pretty heavy stuff, and it's very traumatizing for sure. So that can leave a trauma signature on the body, and sometimes we need help letting that energy go. And humans are very sensitive beings, so the same effect can happen with a little T trauma, and that's like your parents were always working when you were growing up, so they weren't around all the time, but that's okay. It's fine. Like I made it out okay, but that does have an effect. Or your friends said you were bullied in school, and it's like, whatever, I was called names, but it's not a big deal. But it's like you're so impressionable, especially through that 0 to 7 age group, and it really creates your unconscious mind. So parents, teachers, and other people that you're around, especially at that age group, really programs this implicit nature of how you will act as an adult. So that if that stuff doesn't get resolved or or cleared from a trauma perspective, you end up carrying this baggage with you for the rest of your life. And it's possible to do that work to alleviate it, but you know most people have been traumatized in some way, shape, or form, and you can kind of see it more in you know it gets kind of manifested through different types of addiction, whether it's shopping is an addiction, sex, drugs, all that stuff is fits into an addiction part. But yeah, I mean, and we need certain ways to address that trauma. You can go to therapy, you can go to talk therapy, which can help, but you kind of need to get a bit deeper into the unconscious.
Yeah, and what I find fascinating about that in your film is it's not just like a very clinical, here's how to fix your vision type of film. It has some abstract qualities to it in the sense that it talks about the emotional side of having a vision disability. And that's very in tune and very in line with what this podcast is, what the See-Through podcast is. And as someone with RP, I found your film very relatable when it came to talking about how you felt, different, alone, and, with it being an invisible disability and kind of feeling like, there's even a degree for me, here I am talking to you. We have the same thing, but your field of vision may be a more diminished than mine. I sometimes feel guilt because I can see. I do have quite a bit of central vision, and I know people who are younger than me who have RP who can't really see much at all. And, there is something to that. I think it does affect you and how you, function and operate in the world, and how I feel like I process every single thing in my life differently because I'm having to analyze each situation and if it's compatible with my vision. And and when you're growing up, I'm sure you can relate to this, knowing that you have this looming dark cloud over your head about your vision's only going to get worse. I think if you don't address it, it's just going to continue to just really stress you out, and it's going to make you a negative person, I think. And that's part of the reason why I started this podcast too, is I wanted to address it. I wanted to be open about it. I want to talk about it with people. And, because I, for a long time, never talked about it. No one around me knew about it because I would just try to hide it. I worked in video production jobs where I'm on set, and I'm having to maneuver between light stands and microphones and cameras on tripods. And I'm moving at a snail's pace, and people are like, why is Lance moving so slow? And it was so hard for me to not be able to say like why. You have to play it cool. That's just one minor example. There's a bunch of different examples, but I would say, when you talked about just like you called it coming out in a sense, like that is a part of the process of seeing better. Just like understanding your situation and what comes with it. And and you're even taking it even further because you're seeing therapists, you're doing certain therapies to kind of really look inwards and analyze how you perceive yourself. And going into your film, I was kind of expecting like to hear about some sort of medicine or ways that your vision like improves in a dramatic way, and I guess that will lead me to my next question is like, has your field of vision changed at all since you've started these therapies and practices?
Short answer is yes. Initially I started working on my myopia, which is I used to wear glasses, and I reduced my prescription by 33%. And with some of the modalities that I was doing, I did eventually get cataracts. So it was a really tough decision, but I ended up getting my lenses replaced. and they ended up like filling in the rest of my prescription. So I mean, I don't wear glasses to see farsighted anymore. Although I did make a big dent in changing that, and then now I'm just wearing glasses, these like readers to like see things up close, just like magnifiers, because they switch the lens so I could see far, but not, it's just a bit blurry when I see close. And I haven't really announced this publicly yet, but I've been working with a couple of different modalities, and as well as peptides now, and seeing a few specialists with that. And recently, I did go in for a routine like eye exam. Actually, it was more not routine; it was just basically to get some more baselines, because I got a baseline before I started the peptides about a year and a bit ago, and I just went in to get another baseline because I'm going to be starting a new protocol. And I actually found some improvement in the right eye visual fields. So
That's awesome.
So something's doing something, which it was kind of a shock to me, and it was a bit of a shock to my optometrist. I mean, she kind of knows what I'm doing, and I mean, that's a bit unheard of, especially in the RP community. So, like I said, it's something small, but it's documented. I have a before and after, so there's definitely some improvement in the visual fields. So that's a good sign. It's gives me some hope that whatever I'm doing could be really, really helping. So
Yeah, that's good to know. And I guess my big point was, and that's amazing that you're actually seeing improvements. I guess my point was there's two parts, right? Like a physical improvement, in your vision, but also like there's improvements in how you see yourself and what you project, out into the world. And from what I can tell from the documentary, it seemed like you benefited all around. And can you explain the importance of let's just say you didn't get any improvements into your vision at all, and your vision stayed the exact same? Can we talk about the improvements you still would have experienced based off of the treatments and therapies you
of course,
went through?
Yeah. I mean, it's everything's connected. Your whole body's connected. One system is connected to the other. And what you see outside of you is how you feel inside your head. So there's this, you need to, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna, like just work on my eyeballs and try to fix my eyeballs. It's like it doesn't work that way. Mindset is a big part of it. And it's really this balance of looking after your inner world environment and your outer world environment for holistic healing. So all these systems are connected and in tune, and that's what it's about. I mean, the Western model looks everything as sections. I mean, if you need your eyes checked, you go to an optometrist. If if your stomach hurts, you go to a stomach doctor. You know what I mean, like a heart
Yeah, yeah.
specialist or whatever. But like, why aren't we taking a holistic approach? Is everything is connected, and from my understanding is all of these illnesses stem from this disconnection we have to nature and our true self. And the Western model is not designed to have those seemingly invisible quantum principles of connecting to nature. They write them out as woo woo, or that they're not an issue, and like, oh, you'll just go to a doctor and take these pills and find. I'm not mocking some aspects of doctors, like surgery, or if you break your arm they'll help you with the cast. Like, I mean, I'm not knocking modern medicine whatsoever, but there's some things that are drastically broken, and again, once you really learn how to connect to nature, you'd be surprised how much magic can happen. And again, a lot of these things we can't see. A lot of these things stem in certain cycles of light. It's a big part of it, and circadian rhythm. And now we're living an indoor life existence, and people are afraid of the sun, and people are on their phone staring at that blue lit screen or on their computer all the time. And the blue light emission from all these devices wreaks havoc on your eyes and your circadian rhythm, which is responsible for sleep. I mean, how many people do you know that are having sleeping issues?
I know a lot.
Yeah. And it's just the same thing is happening with another aspect that we can't see, and where our bodies are electrical beings. Right now, we were meant, or our ancestors were meant to stand barefoot on the floor. Now we started wearing rubber-soled shoes, so that electrical grounding signature that we got from the Earth's magnetic field is disconnected, because rubber isolates electricity. Unless you walk barefoot or hug a tree, it actually grounds you. So there is some truth to that hippie vibe of hugging a tree. And the other bad thing that with technology is doing, like these electrical fields, we are bombarded by, click on your computer and see how many Wi-Fi signals that your computer will want to connect to. These signals are EMF, and there's a lot of data showing that they are in fact not safe and are not beneficial. Cell towers, your cell phone is constantly emitting this EMF radiation, and a lot of people are in fact sensitive to it. And I don't know if you saw in the film, I do a live blood analysis where Dr. Magda Havis checks my blood before, because I'm quite sensitive to electromagnetic fields, and I ended up sitting on this mat, this PEMF mat, which stands for pulsed electromagnetic field mat. And I'm getting this red light shone on my face. So what this mat is doing is providing beneficial electromagnetic fields. And then half an hour on that thing, they do a blood test, and you saw the result. So if you're being exposed to negative or harmful unresonant EMF forms, that's congealing your blood. So the blood needs to flow to the brain, to the eyes. The eyesight has very small capillaries. So if it's congealed, the blood and oxygen is not going to be fed to those parts of the eyes. So you can get a very similar effect to walking barefoot 10, 20 minutes a day, even 5 minutes. And there's a lot of science on earthing or grounding is what they call it. But we forget that our body is electrical. I mean, the heart functions electrically. And, these, don't get me wrong, I love my phone. I love the technology, but there's a lot of data showing that it's not safe. And people would say otherwise because they're pro-industry and pro-technology. I mean, I love the technology, like I said, but, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So there's a lot to it. And this is kind of what, going blind really taught me how to see these things and really important aspects in what we really need to focus on our health.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I always wonder about, I have like a pair of AirPods, Bluetooth wireless headphones, and I've read some articles, and when I wear them, I'm always a little bit paranoid, but then there's like a little bit of like cognitive dissonance there where I'm like, yeah, but it's fine. It's convenient for me to not have wires, so whatever. It is what it is. And I think there is a lot of thought processes like that where it is what it is. These products are make things so convenient for you that you kind of turn the back of your head off that's telling you to be cautious of it just so you can keep using it and reap the benefits of it.
Turn a blind eye.
Yeah, there you go. And
I get it. I really get it. And I fought with it for a while. I mean, I used to sleep with my Wi-Fi router in my room. I used to sleep with my cell phone under my bed on. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's a lot of data showing that Bluetooth signals are harmful. Uh, you know, Wi-Fi is harmful, and people say, oh, it's non-ionizing, which doesn't heat, the 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 tissue, which so that makes it not a problem. But there's a lot of data showing that it is problematic, and I would love to believe that it's not problematic, but from a lot of the experts that I know and trust, especially a lot of people in the biohacking community, unfortunately, it's not. And I think we're going to see down the line that it's it's in fact problematic. So
Yeah, I agree, and I don't look forward to looking back with regret. But I feel like that's what's going to happen to me. I really need to like probably analyze more about the effects of the technology I use. But then again, it's benefiting me right now because I'm able to sit here and create this podcast and talk with you in Canada. So
oh yeah, I mean it's amazing. It's a double-edged sword, and I mean there's ways to use the internet without having it being wireless. I mean, prime example, I just wired my Ethernet because we were having a bad connection. Look at that, the hardwired connection was a hell of a lot better. So
it's always better, man.
yeah. But I mean, that to sort of like sum up, I mean that's really like the exploration and bigger picture where like I really started to investigate like what environment the body needs to get well, and I just went down this rabbit hole of of really looking at all these other factors which I've never in my life would have thought I would even come to.
Yeah.
So and it's benefited my life a lot. So I mean, I'm a radically different person than I was 10 years ago in terms of mental health and just being healthy and stuff that I've been doing with my vision as well. Like, I mean, if I never ventured down this road, I don't know where I would be. And I think I started my vision, my journey, when I was like, it really happened when I was about 30, 33, I would say. That's when things really like fell apart for me. The universe shakens you to awaken you kind of thing. And that's what happened to me. I mean, it wasn't a pretty time back then, but it definitely woke me up, and started my adventure to exploring things again, like psychedelic medicines as well. And it's, and that's why I made the film.
That's awesome, man. And I'm glad you made the film because it made me aware of things that I felt like I wanted to learn about. I just didn't know where to find the information. So your film does a great job of presenting it in a very like digestible way. But going back a little bit, when it comes to, you talked about monitoring your sleep, your circadian rhythm and being aware of your body in like a holistic sense versus just focusing on your eyes. I find, and I have a theory that since I have RP, I feel like I can't have anything else wrong with me. Where, I get paranoid that like, what if something else comes along in my body and I have two things to worry about. So I kind of feel in a sense paranoid about my health, and therefore I eat specific foods that have certain nutrients, and I exercise, and I try to take care of my body. I just think about my health, and maybe it's I would honestly say it's an unhealthy mindset to have, because you can't really control what happens to your body, but I guess you can control what you do with your body and what you put in it. Do you feel similarly? Do you feel like, for example, like I have two bad knees. I constantly have like fluid in my knees, and I think it's sports related because I used to lift a lot of weights and I played football in high school and tennis, and I broke one of my knees when I was in the 5th grade. So I had knee surgery a couple years ago for some tendons inside of my knee. Basically, I have bad knees, and that stresses me out a great deal because I don't want to have to worry about RP and something else.
That's, I mean, I had issues as well. I mean, I had RP. I was like I had major depression. My stomach was a wreck. I thought, I had like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and like I had severe digestion issues and horrendous sleep. Like I had, I thought like, oh, I just have RP. That's all I'm going to get. That wasn't the case for me. I was like always like the sick kid. Everything's, you know, that always something was always wrong. Nothing like severe, but again, chronic digestive issues is problematic because you have to watch what you eat all the time, and lactose intolerant and gluten intolerant, all that stuff. And so I really took into consideration like that I need to like step up and really kind of get to the bottom of it, and because I don't, if that's where I was like 10, 15 years ago already having these issues, like what's going to happen when I'm, I mean, I am 40 already, 40, 50, 60, like I got to start taking care of myself right now. And
exactly,
like I said, and what I said before, our environment is radically different than our parents' environment. And our generation and generations younger than us are actually not outliving our parents' generation. I mean, this is a fact, and you can look this up, and you have to ask yourself why that is. And it kind of goes back to what I said before in terms of the environment is radically changed, and you can't get well in the same environment you got sick in. And once you learn about environment, then you can make these changes, and there are things you can do, like hearing you talk about your knees, and there's just two things that I could suggest. One is pretty easily get a red light therapy device. I mean, I can tell you where to get one and just like shine the red light on your knees 10, 15 minutes a day and see what happens. It's pretty powerful. Cartilage regeneration, anti-inflammatory properties, and you can shine it on your head. You can shine it either on your eyes too. It's beneficial for eyes. It's like a low-level laser therapy device. I mean, it's very similar to the one that you saw in the documentary, me staring at that red light. So, I mean, that's one thing that you can do. I mean, I have one. I use it all the time.
I remember in that part in the film because it was very, it interested me greatly because you talked about how relaxing it was on your eyes, and my eyes constantly feel tired because people don't really think about that in the way I do, or my eyes have to scan more information. My eyes are constantly moving, left and right to kind of process a full field of vision, which someone with their peripheral vision intact doesn't have to do that. And I remember when I was driving, I would go visit my brother. From North Carolina, I would drive from North Carolina up to Washington, D.C. And by the end of that drive, my eyes were completely done. It was like, it'd be the equivalent of like running a marathon for a runner, but to my eyes. And I didn't think about it back then, but now I'm like, no one else's eyes are like that at the end of a road trip. And again, I'm a video editor, so I'm staring at screens all day. I'm on my phone, all these things, and my eyes never feel refreshed or rejuvenated. And I sometimes, this is probably weird to some people, but it works for me. I take a shower in the dark. I just turn the lights out, and it's just refreshing to my eyes. It's almost like a double-edged sword. Like when it's nighttime and I'm in my room and all the lights are out, there's no glare making my eyes sensitive, so it's actually relaxing to my eyes, but simultaneously, since it's low light, I can't see much. But back to what we were talking about, the red light therapy, I was like, oh, I want to do that. So the fact that you said I can get one in my own home is very appealing to me, and I feel like would be appealing to anyone listening too who wants to try it out. So can you tell everyone how to get involved in that?
Yeah, I know the guys that put this light together. It's a EMR tech, and their Instagram is Electromagnetic Revolution. I think we can put the link in the show notes. I actually have I can get the listeners a discount code for the light. It's the They have a few different types, but there's like a smaller one that I have. It's downstairs, that I'd show it to you. But they're great lights. I mean, it's good for any and most conditions or injuries as well. Like I said, you can use it on your knees. I actually shine it on the top of my head before I go to bed. I'm lying down. I have it just shining here. In the morning, I wake up, shine it on my face and my thyroid. And there's a lot of info about how red light therapy benefits the retina, because it's one of those signals that because living an indoor life existence, we're not being exposed to. And it's got a very anti-inflammatory effect. So, like I said, I could, I can send you the link to the website, and they're relatively inexpensive for the units, what they are. And I do have a discount code for it because I truly believe in the light, so I support their products. EMR-tech.com, and you can use the code Blind Biohacker to get them there. I also, on wherever I go to a lighting store, and in the evening, I have like a night mode in my house. So basically, at night I get these red light bulbs and just have these red lights instead of white lights at night, so I can still see. And my night vision's compromised too, so I just get these lamps with these red lights, and the red light doesn't strain the eyes and it doesn't disrupt your circadian rhythm. There's a filter that you can get for your laptop that takes away some of the blue, kind of like the night shift mode on the phone. It's called Iris or Flux F.lux, and these are free things you can just add to your laptop or computer that takes away the red. If you want, you can wear blue light blocking glasses. There's kind of like
my glasses I'm wearing right now, I have the blue light anti-glare on them, which is very helpful.
Yeah, that is helpful. But for nighttime, you like to protect your circadian rhythm, you actually don't want any blue light hitting your eye. So you almost would need like an orange pair, and they make these orange pairs as well. I mean, you can either do that or just change your lighting environment, like I said, with the red lights, or change this, use that Flux application or Iris application on your laptop. And it's really, to explain it simply, you want to mimic what's going on in nature to not blow your eyes out and to protect your circadian rhythm. So when the sun is coming up in the morning, and then it's you don't want to look at a very blue light in the morning, because that tricks your eyes to kind of thinking it's noon. But when it's daytime and the full spectrum light is out, you want to get some light exposure outside. But when the sun goes down, your eye clock should not be looking at a blue light signal. Again, for thousands of years, when the sun was down, our ancestors were not looking at any blue light. The only blue light they would have seen was maybe from the moon. And the only light source they had was fireplace. And what color is fireplace? Red and infrared.
That's true.
Now with technology, we have the lights on, LED lights, which are very harmful, compact fluorescents, which have a flicker. They're also very harmful. This throws off your circadian rhythm.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. I think
it's very damaging.
It's very exciting for me because I never even thought of red light and using that. And so now it's definitely on my radar. I plan to experiment with it. It was EMR Tech for the red light.
Yeah, EMR-tech.com. And then there's a few different lights. I have the Firewave. That's the first one I got. It's like it's like about this big, very powerful red LED light, 3 spectrums of red.
Yeah.
And just, your body, brain wants that signal. So highly recommend it. And use the code Blind Biohacker. It'll save you some cash on it.
Cool. So yeah, use the code Blind Biohacker at EMR Tech. And I will have a link to EMR Tech in the show description. So don't worry, just check it there. This leads me to, we just covered, the red light therapy. There was one other thing I was very interested in hearing about, just out of curiosity about it, just because it's very unique. And I didn't expect it to be a part of your film, was when you went to the overnight ceremony with the South American shaman and you drank the ayahuasca tea, which is a psychedelic tea. And you did this, correct me if I'm wrong, to look beyond the surface layer of your conscious and reveal like what's deep down hidden inside your psyche and conscious. And I would just love to hear about that experience.
Well, I don't know if you know who Carl Jung is. He was a famous psychologist of the past, and he one of his famous quotes is, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll direct your life, and you'll call it fate." So a lot of what's happening in our system is done unconsciously. You know, how our thyroid gland is functioning, how we're breathing without even realizing it. So trauma and that works in that same unconscious world too. It's like why when somebody says something, you kind of have this like knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, this guy's like that's all implicit, and that's like based in early programming. And the traumas kind of fit in that realm. So we need these tools to kind of gain access to the unconscious mind and teach it how to learn and allow the trauma energy that ends up being stuck in the body, whether it's stuck in like a tension or trauma energy can actually manifest into certain autoimmune issues as well. And that guy, Dr. Gabor Mate, was one of the first people who brought my attention to the power of psychedelic medicines to kind of get access to those seemingly inaccessible traumas. So, if done in the right setting, these medicines can be very powerful at helping people alleviate, symptoms of anxiety and depression. And I went through a lot of that with taking medications and antidepressants, and they didn't work much for me. And I found they were just Band-Aid solutions that just made me feel worse. So I felt like it was something that I needed to do to kind of address that area. And I've done a lot of research in that realm, and the science behind what they're doing and what MAPS is doing. And MAPS is called the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and for the past 30-40 years they've been looking at how MDMA it helps people with PTSD, and psilocybin mushrooms for end of life patients to get rid of the end of life anxiety, and ayahuasca for depression and anxiety. And so there's a lot of research and medicine showing that this can help people who have who are stuck in their mood and want some help. So it's very powerful. It's not easy work, and I'm not advocating that it's for everybody, and I'm not advocating just taking them and running around the city doing it. You really have to hold these medicines with reverence and respect and setting. And obviously there's some legality issues when it comes to them. They're not technically legal. So, but the research is coming out, and places are opening up for people to kind of like, get info on maybe where they can find some sanctioned place to do it. Ketamine is another one that's actually now legal, ketamine clinics for similar things. Or, you can do what I did. I went to Peru in 2012. It was the first time I did it. And then, we decided to, we found some people that were doing it, around near where I live. And, we had a sanctioned ceremony and around here. So we ended up filming it and sharing that experience. But it's very powerful, and it's work. It takes work too. It's not just like a magic bullet where you do it once and you're cured, so to speak. But it can really expedite the process. Some people say that it's 5 years of psychotherapy squished down into one night.
Wow.
So,
that's 5 years is a long time to put in one night. And I remember in the documentary, you mentioned, the next day after the ceremony was over, that you kind of realized that you were taking some things in life too seriously, and that drinking the tea and kind of feeling the effects of it allowed you to kind of look within yourself and kind of learn things about yourself that you didn't know. Can you share anything that you, I guess, have learned about yourself through using ayahuasca tea?
Well, I think a lot of life anxiety comes from the fact that the fear of death, and I mean, newsflash, we're all going to die, but, it's just a matter of when. But, it doesn't have to be scary. And, life is life has a funny way of just working out, and we take things just too seriously. And sometimes there's that bigger situation that happens to you, especially in that psychedelic experience, it makes you realize that all that stuff that you were sweating, like, don't sweat the small stuff. It's no big deal. And that it also reminds you that you're a lot more powerful than you think you are. And it reminds you that, again, that we have this ability to heal ourselves. So it ends up being this like long view. You see the bigger picture of you and where you fit into life. It also reminds you that you're just a small speck on this vast universe. So it's very humbling at the same time. So it's kind of hard to really explain the dynamic and happening that goes on in that situation. It makes you realize that the world is the world and the universe is a very spiritual place. It's very God inducing. It reminds you, you feel, whatever religion you do or don't believe in, or what you think spirituality is, it definitely reminds you that there's something bigger out there, whatever you want to call it, God, spirit, your higher self. So you kind of feel it with intense emotion. And once you really feel things with that intense emotion, it sticks with you. And again, it makes your other problems kind of like disappear.
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know. I think you did a good job at responsibly discussing it. Obviously, like you said, you don't want to take any of these things irresponsibly, and it requires a right setting. You were in a controlled setting with, professionals around you. So, but yeah, that scene is in the documentary. Again, that documentary is called My Neuroplastic Adventure. That's just one small part of it, and one of the ways Victor dives deep into himself. And the documentary covered a lot of information. I think the only way to truly, you can't just listen to this episode and not understand everything that happened in your doc. So I recommend everyone to go see his film, which is My Neuroplastic Adventure, and you can find it on iTunes. And I recommend everyone go watch that. So now that we've covered your doc, I would love to chat about anything new that maybe you're practicing or working on, where it's project wise, maybe a new documentary. I know you mentioned a summit earlier, and then, or also any new treatments you're experimenting with.
Yeah, I'm toying with the idea to do like a kind of a sequel, more, like an Anthony Bourdain travel biohacking docu-series kind of thing, where like I go around the world and talk to experts, and kind of what I do with the film, but more like a series based, and have it focused on stuff. Again, it's selfish for me, because it's just like it helps me explore and learn about these treatments in the same way that you were talking about why you started the podcast. So it's the same kind of thing. But I'm not really sure of the state of traveling at the moment, but it's still on the back burner. But new treatments I'm looking into are like still fascinated by stem cells and how that can help us and other people with serious injuries. like I said before, peptides have really fascinated me, and peptides are, I think, one of I think they're a big part in the future of medicine, as acting like signaling molecules to just allow the body to do what it's supposed to do. So, and that's what I've been on a mission and on a journey for the past year or so, and I'm still continuing to work with various different types of peptides because there's quite a bit.
And what is peptides?
So peptides are they're like an amino acid sequence. Like insulin is actually a peptide.
Okay.
So peptides is a bit of a ubiquitous term. I think your thyroid actually creates peptides internally. Your body creates peptides, but sometimes when something is off or not functioning properly, there's been a drastic reduction in the body's ability to create these peptides. So they found ways to synthesize the creation of them and to get these peptide levels up. So they kind of work like precursors to stem cells in a way. There's peptides for your immune system. There's peptides for your mitochondria. There's peptides for the brain, the eyes, and there's new compounds kind of coming up. So it's really kind of blown up a bit in the biohacking health optimization world. And I've had my finger on the pulse for a while. And I found some Russian studies, 30, 40, from like 20, 30 years ago of them, working with people with retinitis pigmentosa as well and showing some pretty interesting results. So, I'm connected to a few people in the peptide world now and have been, trialing some things and getting some pretty interesting results. And I'm hoping to document the process to see what treatments they can radically change. So, I'm sure the peptides can help your knees too, because there's a few peptides that help with, healing stubborn injuries that won't really heal. There's one particular peptide called BPC, body protective compound 157, BPC 157, and it's something that you could probably add to your knee to have some, to really accelerate that chronic injury that you have. Along with the red light therapy, you'd be golden.
Well, that's good to hear. That was the first time I've heard about peptides, so thanks for sharing that, and I can't wait to do some research on that.
If you're in New York, I know a doctor in New York who might be able to hook you up with peptides if you're again open to it. I mean, we can talk about that offline.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that recommendation.
But yeah, like I said, working on another documentary. Just always fascinated by research, and like I'm kind of underground. Things on the mainstream are a little bit boring and stale, and there's the fun things happen on the underground, and the mainstream is a bit I don't know how to put it, a bit stale at times. So
yeah, I agree, and that's why, besides having the same disability as me, and besides being a part of a film and talking about a film, I was very excited to have you on because you were presenting such a unique kind of, what you would say. Yeah, I would agree with you. It's an underground viewpoint of things and a different way to think about things. And I've had, when it comes to treatments and things like that, I've always been told there's nothing I can do and except wear sunglasses and eat foods with vitamin A. So it's like, that's basically all I've been told. And, that's kind of what I've accepted. But, after watching your film, you're thinking about different therapies, and, it kind of excites me to try out new things. And, and at the very least, it gives me some hope. So thanks for creating a project that does that. And I look forward to any of your future work. And thanks for coming on the podcast. I don't want to take up your whole afternoon. I know you're a busy man. So, that leads me to my last little bit of this episode is, each episode I let the guests kind of talk about, an organization, a charity, or a nonprofit that they want to highlight, that maybe needs some extra promotional love, that maybe it's something that no one really knows about. Do you have anything or any organization you want to give a shout out to?
I'm trying to think about this one, and I really like, they're actually in New York too. I really like the work that the two blind brothers are doing. I know they're having all their profits for, vision research. I've spoken to both of those guys, and they're amazing, doing some great work. I haven't met them yet. I was actually supposed to be in New York last week, but I didn't travel there. But I usually do. I'm supposed to travel there, so next time I'm there, I'd love to meet up with you. And I know they're in New York too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're based in New York. I don't know if you knew this, but they were the first guest I had on the podcast.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Very nice guys, and yeah, their company Two Blind Brothers they design clothing, and all of their profits from their clothing sales goes to the research for curing blindness. So
yeah, so them, the Foundation for Fighting Blindness, I like to support them and the work that they're doing, and that's all I can think of at the moment. There's a lot of people doing great charity work, and that's great. I really appreciate that work that they do, and Two Blind Brothers are doing some amazing stuff. So I'd like to, I support them. So I'm still kind of new to all this.
Same.
So yeah,
I'm brand new to it, and since I've started this podcast, I've been, doing a lot of community outreach, I'd call it, on social media, and just meeting and following a lot of people with RP and other disabilities, and it's been quite fun to just dive into this world and meet so many new people. I mean, that's how me and you got in contact, was just that very basic thing, just connecting on Instagram. So
yeah,
helpful tools also can be very disruptive tools too, like we talked about, but yeah, they can be very helpful as well. Yeah, and definitely if you're ever in New York, definitely hit me up. I'd love to grab a coffee or something.
I will, for sure. I mean, I don't know what traveling is going to look like in the next bit, but for sure I will. And thanks for starting this podcast, because again, it wouldn't it allowed us to have this conversation, so good on you. And I really respect what you're doing too, man. You and I have a very similar story. So RP and love film and video and editing, and just on a quest to help people. So that's what I am here for too. So
maybe one day we will collaborate on a project.
That'd be great. I'd love to do that. I'm going to be starting more. I'm kind of changing my business around. I'm working on a vision optimization summit. Don't have a date for that yet, but it's going to be virtual, and it's going to be like a collection of different doctors and therapists, kind of explaining different parts of, potential vision therapies that aren't necessarily mainstream. So holistic kind of vision approach from a trauma side, peptides, color light therapy, the Bates method, and a lot of these things that I used and I've learned from. So it's just, like a virtual summit of learning from the masters. So I'll let you know when that's coming up, but it should be maybe around the end of the year.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that, and I plan to be in attendance, virtual attendance. Smart to do that during this time. So I would say, before we close out, give everyone listening, information on how to find your film, or what's your Instagram handle, maybe even promote yourself a little bit.
So my Instagram handle is @blindbiohacker, and the documentary film is called My Neuroplastic Adventure. It's now released on iTunes. Just type in My Neuroplastic Adventure, give it a rent. I don't think it's very expensive. If you have any questions, DM me on Instagram. I check my DMs. I do consulting. So if people have like more in-depth questions about health optimization, vision related stuff, and they want to talk to me about it, we can set that up. But yeah, check out the website for the film, myneuroplasticadventure.com, and that's it. I'm pretty easy to find. So pretty approachable guy.
Sounds good. And I agree, you are a very approachable guy. But Victor, man, I think we covered quite a bit of ground. I probably could have talked to you for another 5 hours, I bet. Yeah, a lot of interesting content.
Anytime you want to call.
Yeah, that's good to know. And so yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast, man, and good luck on your next projects.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, take care. there you have it. That was Victor Mifsud. Do Victor a favor and follow him on social media. His handle is @blindbiohacker. And like he said, direct message him if you have any questions. Victor also gave a shout out to EMR Tech, a company that specializes in red light therapy devices. Learn more about EMR Tech by visiting emr-tech.com. And you can use Victor's discount code BLINDBIOHACKER to save some cash on your purchase there. Lastly, Victor's featured nonprofit or organization was Two Blind Brothers. These guys keep popping up in these episodes, and I think there's a reason for it. The work they're doing is truly fantastic, and they have a solid product. And if you didn't know, Two Blind Brothers is a clothing company in which all of the profit from their sales goes towards research for curing blindness. Two Blind Brothers were also the first guest on my podcast, so go back and check out that episode if you haven't already. And also check out their clothing by visiting twoblindbrothers.com. That's TWO blindbrothers.com. And that does it for episode 10. I feel like I'm starting to get in a groove here. So hopefully I can keep this pace up with, releasing episodes. On that note, episode 11 hopefully will be here before you know it. So until episode 11, as always, stay transparent.